Hello, my darling parents. Welcome to room 204, the virtual edition. So glad to have you here. I am Miss Whitman. I'll be teaching your child this year, and I just want to share some things that make our classroom special. I'll try to make it quick, and I look forward to hopefully meeting lots of you in person over the course of this year. All right, so let's get started. First thing, here's my email address. If you need to contact me for any reason this year, I try my best to get back to people quickly. Every now and then I fail, but I will certainly be doing my best to get back to you should you have any questions or concerns. So that's my email address. A couple things about our classroom that I want to share. First off is that this classroom is one that I strive to make a place where love is the fuel that keeps us going. So I know there may be some other approaches to teaching involving fear or other things like that, but in my view, the best way to get kids invested is to just show them how much you love them and let them know that they are safe, making mistakes and learning together. So I really spend a lot of time early in the year and throughout the year building community and trying to create that sense of safety so that kids can be vulnerable and make errors because we're going to in the learning process. Weirdness is also a big factor in this room. I think that middle school can be a time where we try really hard to conform to other people's standards. And I remember doing that myself as a middle schooler. And part of the reason I became a middle school teacher is to help students recognize that their weirdness is what makes them so special and fabulous. And so this is a room where we really try to embrace both our weirdness and the weirdness of others. Whether that comes in the form of artistic talent or breaking into random song, which happens to be one of my weird things, or wild dance moves or a deep passion for horses, whatever it might be, we just are here to accept and embrace and learn from each other's weirdness. So that's a big part of this room as well. In terms of curriculum, I'll go into that a little more in the next couple slides, but curriculum, it varies depending on subject, of course. So I teach currently sixth grade language arts, sixth grade writing, and a seventh and eighth grade theater elective. And again, I'll walk through some of the more detailed elements of that in a moment. I'll talk to you about my credentials in another moment, and then I want to share some communication suggestions. And then last of all, I have two, not one favor, two favors actually to ask. So again, I'll try to go quick. Bear with me. All right. So we talked about love, but again, I think that love is so key here because if a child doesn't feel loved and safe, Maslow before Bloom, if they don't feel safe and cared for, and just all those basic needs, feeling that if those aren't met, then it's very hard for us to meet their more intellectual needs. And so I make it a point of just leading with love. Um, Here's some pictures to just prove the weirdness. You can see my wacky tacky day outfit from several years ago. Some mustaches I have. I may or may not have a package of like 100 fake mustaches in my drawer of my desk for reasons unknown. Um, and yeah, so we embrace our weird in here. It's a place where we have fun, but we also learn. Okay, so in terms of curriculum, in writing workshop, we'll focus on several units. The first will be a personal narrative unit. It'll start with a storytelling component and then move into the actual writing of personal narratives. For the storytelling unit, we rely a lot on some stories from a wonderful podcast called The Moth. If you haven't heard of it, highly recommend The Moth. Great podcast. We also will work on literary essays where we'll be writing analytical responses to literature that we read. And then last of all, we'll do a research-based informational writing unit where we'll actually be creating our own electronic books about a subject of interest. We'll also, of course, focus on grammar. I love grammar. I know that's probably not always students' favorite thing, but I am deeply, deeply passionate about it. So they will be meeting Big Mama Comma this year. We'll be doing lots of fun with pronouns. We're going to sing a lot of grammar songs. It's going to be awesome. And poetry is one of my other favorite elements to bring into our classroom. So in March, we'll have a March Madness poetry event. And throughout the year, I like to intersperse poems for different seasonal reasons and just because poetry brings joy to the world and peace to the mind. Um, we'll also focus on some everyday writing skills because at the end of the day, not every student in this room I know is going to become a professional writer, but every one of us is going to need to write. And so in terms of writing quality emails, that's going to be something we focus on. Taking good notes, that's going to be a big focus area for us. So some of those everyday skills are some of the I think, most important things we'll focus on this year. In language arts class, we'll be doing some class reading selections. We'll read several novels throughout the year. Those are a mix of choices that I've made and choices that I've kind of made in conjunction with students. Sometimes we'll do small group book clubs where students will meet in groups of 4 or 5 and they'll read a book together and they'll kind of plan out the completion and discussion of that book. We'll also, of course, be independent reading. So every Friday, I'll do a little independent reading check-in with students to make sure that they're making progress on their books that they're reading at home. I try to mimic real life as much as possible when it comes to reading because I don't want it to feel like a chore or a torture. And so, for the most part, I will be giving students a ton of freedom in terms of what they read, and I'm just asking that they do the reading. We'll focus on some of the great skills that make good readers, talk about what good readers do, and then try and emulate those skills as independent readers. And we'll do lots and lots of vocabulary too. So every week we'll have vocabulary units and we'll have a vocabulary quiz every Friday. Um, I don't really believe in vocabulary quizzes where they're just matching up a word and a definition because I think they memorize that and then pretty promptly forget it after. And so instead, we do vocabulary quizzes that require a little bit more critical thinking on their part. In theater class, we'll learn about all kinds of elements of theater, everything from what happens backstage to some of the careers related to theater. We'll be learning about some acting techniques. We'll learn about improvisation. And at the end, we'll actually put on a culminating performance for some of our peers. So that's super fun. Theater is like, it's game time. It's so fun. We play so many games and it's just a blast. So I'm excited for that. As far as my credentials, my undergraduate degree comes from Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Go Diplomats. I had a great experience there. I was an English and Spanish double major. Definitely did not study teaching. Teaching thing happened much later, but I loved it dearly and I miss it a lot. Lancaster's a great place and it's a beautiful school. I then, right after college, went to grad school at the University of Pennsylvania, where I studied higher education. I thought I wanted to be like, kind of had aspirations of being like a college president, but then I got over that and decided that that was not the best fit and ultimately worked for a study abroad company. And I loved that too. I got to live in some beautiful countries. I lived in Peru and Belize, spent some time in Mexico, and then ultimately concluded that the part of my job that I loved the best was the part where I was teaching groups of students about cultural adaptation. And I just kind of thought to myself, why am I not teaching all the time? And that's kind of what brought me to education. And I'm so very thankful that Collingswood took a risk and took on a teacher with no actual classroom experience. And I have just loved my time here. And I most of all love my students. They mean the world to me. If you want to communicate with me, lots of ways to do it. As I mentioned, email is really great, but if you ever want to chat face to face and for COVID reasons or other reasons you're not able to get here in person, we can always schedule a video chat. I'm happy to do that. I also send out a regular-ish brochure. I call it the 204 brochure. Hopefully many of you have received it in your email. If you haven't and you want to let me know, I'll certainly add any new email to the list. But I use that as a means of updating you on what we're doing in class, what social emotional learning things are happening, and what events are happening across the district. I'm also pretty active on Twitter and Instagram at my school handle, Wonder Whitman. So feel free to follow me. I would love to have you following, and you'll see some of the fun things that go on in our room. Okay, so last thing, I'm so impressed with myself, by the way. This is the fastest video I've ever made. Which is kind of pathetic, I guess, because it's still 7 minutes, 8 minutes, but oh well. Anyway, so 2 favors I want to ask of you as parents and guardians of 6th graders this year, or 7th and 8th graders for my theater parents. The first favor is that I want you to let your child be your teacher. There is a lot of science and study that tells us that one of the best ways to retain and hold on to information that we learn is by teaching it to other people. So I would encourage you, whenever possible, when your schedule allows, ask your child what they're learning about in school and have them actually teach you about it. You can do it in the most casual of ways. Just say, tell me something you learned today. Tell me the top 3 points that you took away from writing workshop. But just doing that, asking kids to do that synthesis work is so, so valuable. And it'll also bring you and your child closer together, which is amazing. We love relationships. The other huge favor I have to ask is that you prioritize reading in your household. There is a lot of science here too that says the number one predictor of success in students in the future has to do with reading to them. And I would argue that it's not just reading to them, it's reading beside them, reading with them. Showing them that you live a beautiful reader life is just incredibly meaningful in terms of helping them to see the value of reading. It doesn't matter so much to me what you're reading as it does that you are doing it consistently and in large quantity. Students just seeing their parents read, reading alongside other people, seeing the normalcy of reading in our everyday lives is just so crucial. I always laugh because I show the students how in my bag there's never fewer than 2 books. So if I were to pull up my bag right now, literally, I could pull out probably 4 or 5 books, and I never go anywhere without at least 1 book or 2 in my bag with me so that I always have a chance to read if I have any little margin time here or there. So I would just encourage you to try and model that for your children. Show them that reading is just one of the most beautiful ways to spend your time. And I can't thank you enough for doing that. I also can't thank you enough for entrusting your children to me this year. I am so thrilled to be their teacher. I am thrilled to meet you again virtually, hopefully in person one of these days. And I just thank you so much for being supportive of all of our efforts this year. I look forward to getting to know your kids better, and I thank you so much. Have a great night, day, morning, whatever it is.